Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on our wrap up show, where our discussion today will be dominated by two words: immigration reform. And here to discuss that with us today is my co host and my law partner, Martin Balco. Martin, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing okay. Thanks, Nick. It's Friday, so it's almost
Yep.
Saturday, but for us, it's Thursday because we work on Saturdays, and you and I work on Sundays, so weekends not
Yeah.
never around. But yeah, immigration reform is something that's on everybody's minds,
hmm
and something that the Congress should do. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah, 24/7. That's what we're about. So today we'll be covering various immigration reform plans in which you guys are hearing a lot of buzz these days. We realize that it's causing some of you anxiety and frustration as we prepare ourselves on what is going to happen in the next couple of years. And of course, feel free to send us those questions. If you have any questions, send them our way. We'll be happy to respond to them. So now that the elections are over, we have a better idea of the political landscape for next year. As we know, the Republicans will have a very, very narrow majority in the House. And as we know as well, Republicans generally tend to favor security measures like border security, immigration enforcement, that type of deal, and not so much on the immigration benefits aspect. On the Senate side, as we saw on Tuesday, the Democrats should hold the majority in the Senate heading into next year with Senator Warnock winning the Senate seat in Georgia, which turns out to was extremely important for the Democrats because, as we're seeing now with breaking news this morning, Senator Sinema in Arizona is now leaving the Democratic Party. Sinema, I can never pronounce her name, and she decided she's going to register with the Independents. But even so, the Democrats should still have a majority in the Senate with the tiebreaker being the vice president. So what does this mean? Well, it means that Congress in the next 2 weeks or so will be trying to push and cram immigration reforms through a pipeline and get them passed just before the end of the year, before the new House members take their seats on January 3rd, I think, January 3rd. And we know it's going to be a huge challenge to pass reforms, mainly because now you have to, with the Senate, you will need to convince at least 9 or maybe 10 Republican senators that immigration reforms are the right thing to do. And that's going to be difficult, but we'll see what happens. There has been some traction with some of these bills, and the best place I think to start is with the Dreamers. So the Dreamers, what is in store for the Dreamers? This is what many people are hoping for. They're hoping to achieve some legislation by the end of the year, some pathway to legal status, eventually citizenship for the many Dreamers who came in the United States at an early age, and they're an integral part of our society. And this week we saw some signs of some life, of some bipartisan support. Senators have been working around the clock, negotiating important pieces of the law. There were reports that Senator Sinema, did I say that right? I almost messed that up. From Arizona, and I won't mess up this name, Mr. Tillis, from a Republican senator. They've been outlining a plan for the Dreamers, and we don't know what that language exactly looks like. But Mark, can you tell us a little bit more about the parts that they're negotiating, the things that they're looking
Yeah.
at?
So I mean, we've been down this road quite a few times, and again, it's for the DACAs, for the Dreamers, for the kids or young adults that were brought into the U.S. as undocumented by their parents or by whomever, and they are fully incorporated in the system in our society, and so, but still with this seesaw, you have it, you don't have it, you have it, you don't have it, kind of a pattern by various states and lawsuits that we've seen over the last few months and years. There's got to be some stability, and so that's what Senator Sinema and Tillis are trying to bring together in a bipartisan bill. It is supposed to be a bill that will protect approximately 2 million folks, 2 million people. Don't have an exact language out there yet, but it's basically trying to kind of deal the protection of the Dreamers for border security, and that's kind of rings well in the Republicans' ears. It's about beefing up border agents, additional 25 billion in funding for border patrol and security. And then there's this controversial Title 42 that is about to end at midnight on December 21st, which is basically expulsions of immigrants, refugees, and asylees that are coming across the border back through our southern border. And so that is supposed to end pursuant to an order of a federal judge. And so that particular provision would be extended for about another year, in exchange for this protection for Dreamers, while the Title 42 would stay in place for about a year, while the federal government just kind of builds up these regional centers that are supposed to be set up for screening of people, asylum seekers, so they would not be processed, given a court date, and they're just kind of, they would go off on their own for several years before they have a hearing, but they would be held in a center, in a regional center, until and they would have these expedited hearings. And then that's basically what this exchange is. We'll protect your Dreamers, but give us the border security and extend the Title 42. So again, nothing. As I said, no language yet. We'll see what will be negotiated. But again, we've been there several times already, and so until there's more and there's more people will jump on the bandwagon, we'll just have to wait and see on that.
Yeah, and you would think that Dreamer legislation, oh man, yeah, that sounds really good to the Democrats, right? That it would be a shoo-in if something is proposed and you get this and you try to get Democratic support. But we saw that this is very controversial. I mean, this morning, Representative Chuy Garcia and others were already saying no because of what you mentioned, the restrictions, the border security. They're afraid that they're going to militarize. That's what the word they use, the border, and so the politics gets in the way naturally, and we were hoping that we would get some solid support, and that could happen. We'll see what happens. The reality is that DACA is just a temporary thing, and with what's going on right now with the litigation, it's going to probably end up at the Supreme Court next year. So things are very uncertain as to how long DACA will be around to provide some benefits. So there's incredible pressure. So So moving on from DACA, there's also a group of workers where we are seeing some bipartisan support. In fact, there was a bill called the Farm Workforce Modernization Act that passed the House last year. What can you tell us about this movement for farm workers?
Well, again, we have the rising food prices. There's inflation going around, which is the highest in the last 40 years. And so, again, we've seen something similar before, and it basically would allow farmers or farm workers that are working on farms throughout the United States to come forward and be able to apply for a legal worker status. The acronym there is, or abbreviation is, CAW. And that would grant them basically 5.5 years of legal residency, and that would include their dependents if they are in the U.S. Or if they're not. It would prevent their removal or deportation while these applications are pending. It would not penalize their employers if they previously employed these individuals. Like you mentioned, it was a very bipartisan supported bill. It had 247 to 174 or something like that in 2021. So we'll have to see if that's going to go through. One thing that it would require that all agricultural workers would be screened through mandatory E-Verify Employment Authorization Verification Program, which is a database kept by the Department of Homeland Security. Currently, it's only mandatory in, I believe it's 8 states: Alabama, Arizona, Georgia, Mississippi, North and South Carolinas, Tennessee, and Utah. Then it's also required for certain state employers, contractors that do work with federal government. But by and large, for example, in Texas, it's not mandatory. And so employers get to choose if they're going to use E-Verify, which is pretty strict, because if somebody gets a hit that they are not non-employment authorized, then the employers cannot employ them, or paper-based verification, which is more lenient, and even those that are not employment authorized, if they're using fictitious documentation, for example, they're able to get employed and be employed. And that's the difference here, that the ag sector basically would have to start using E-Verify program. So
yeah,
it is a, I suspect there are, tens and hundreds and thousands probably workers that are not employment authorized that are somehow working, and so that would allow them to come forward and apply for the status, and then hopefully down the road be even eligible for citizenship, years and years down the road.
Yeah. Martin, you and I, we see how important this is, especially here living in Texas, where there are a lot of ranches, and there have been many times where a ranch owner has come to our office to see if we can get legal status for their workers at the ranch. Yeah. And the most individuals that we've seen that work there, they don't have any paperwork, and it's difficult for them to get their legal status because they've been living here for such a long time without any legal status. So the ranch owners, they do complain. They're unable to hire American workers. Essentially, no one wants to do those jobs because those migrant workers, they're doing this type of work that it's laborious. It's they're outside in the elements. It would be a good thing. All right. So moving on, and this is another topic that is being monitored in the social media, in the social media world, I should say. And this has to do with removing the per country cap for employment visas. And Martin, you practice employment immigration, and you're more familiar with this issue. Right now it's being monitored. The proposal on the table, the bill is called the EAGLE Act, and a lot of people have been reviewing this and looking at it and anticipating it, and seeing if this is going to be something that's going to change, and it's going to have an effect either way on those who are applying for employment visas. What can you tell us, Mark?
Yeah, so you basically have two general categories: family and employment categories that are capped by a finite number of visas or green cards, if you will, and then those are also capped at certain percentage per country. So if you have a certain number of applicants applying for a particular country, and that number is exceeded, those will then get put in the back of the line. When somebody says, "Hey, get in the back of the line," this is extremely specific, and because these folks are here. For example, the two countries that are heavily retrogressed and heavily backlogged are India and China, and India more so than China. But basically, there have been so many petitions in various categories, but really we're focusing on the second preference and third preference, which is you could have an advanced degree position, or you could have somebody with a bachelor's degree with less than 5 years experience, or basically non-degree position that somebody's being sponsored for. But majority of these are for people with with professional degrees and professional positions, and so they get to sit or go in the back of the line, and the line is extremely long. So for India, for both categories, second and third, you're looking about 10 years right? So then you have to maintain your non-immigrant status while you're waiting for your green card and for your number, it's called priority date, to become current, to become available. So then you can, if you're in the US, adjust status, apply for adjustment, apply for your green card. And so, this act discusses basically lifting the per country cap. So those folks and their family members would be able to file for a green card and be free, so to speak, because otherwise they are, I would say, non-committed, right? They are in your apartments and they're not buying houses from our clients, from what I see, because they're just still not really sure whether they will gonna get it or not, right? And so this would allow them to step forward and submit the green card application, and then when approved, they would adjust their status to lawful permanent residence. They would become the green card holders, and then 5 years later, they could be eligible for citizenship. And so, there's a lot of noise that we're seeing online and with various groups and organizations. There are, opponents, they're just basically stating that if you do that, you're going to get a flood of applicants or applications from these particular countries and others. It will be detriment to the other countries. I don't know. Personally, I don't know if I'll see it that way, because you work with them on a daily basis. And when you look at somebody's wait time is 10 years,
right.
While they get to be here lawfully and they are in legal status, for example, on H-1B, and they get to extend it under certain provisions, they're still just kind of tied down. Most of them are tied down to one particular employer. They don't want to go to another employer, because if they do, they would have to restart that green card process in that first part, through the petition, and it's a long process, pretty complex process to get to the immigrant petition. And so a lot of them are just hesitant, even in going to another employer and seeing Sure. and realizing another opportunity. So I see it pretty favorably, in my opinion. But again, there are.
Yeah, there has been resistance. A couple of representatives have already voiced their opposition because of that, because they think it's going to be disproportionate. That there are many people from India or China, for example, that are coming from these heavy waiting time countries, are going to be, for lack of a better word, flooding in and grabbing these visas. And the solution, you would think, is, well, that's going to happen. Why don't we give more visas out, right?
Right.
And so that way the smaller countries or the underrepresented nationals from those countries are not left out. Well, we'll see. This bill actually was slated for vote this week on the House floor, but perhaps because of this resistance, I don't know, they are rescheduling it. And it's going to be up for vote next week, so we're going to be monitoring that, and whatever we find, we'll go ahead and send that information to you. Moving on, and this is a kind of an interesting topic, and has to do with we're used to talking about dreamers, right? And with dreamers are those individuals who don't have any legal status. They might have applied for DACA, which, by the way, requires that the person not have legal status, and they were here for such a long period of time. But now this new term, right? This year it kind of popped up. What do we do with those individuals who came in with their parents, right? There are these visas, worker visas, and they have dependent classifications for spouses and children under 21. They come in legally, they stay, they're going to school while their parents are working on these worker visas. But that child dependent category doesn't last forever. I mean, it caps out when you're 21. What do we do with those? And so they come up with this new term, right? Documented dreamers. What do we do with documented dreamers? Can you tell us a little bit about that push, that movement?
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, we talked about it before, and that's basically. I don't know exact specifics of this proposal, but it is a huge deal, and it's a big problem when you have foreign nationals. They're working here for many years. They come in, they have an H-1B, for example. These Indian nationals, or anybody else that has a dependent who came in when they're teens, when they're kids, and all of a sudden they turn 21 and they're no longer classified as a child
Yeah.
of that principal beneficiary, and they have to fend for themselves.
What do
Right.
they
And
do
so,
in those situations? Like,
well,
do they change?
typically, if they're still 21, they're still in school. They basically change status from H4 to or E2 dependent or L2 dependent to H4. I mean, I'm sorry, to F1. So they basically just gain their own status, but they have
Right.
to work with the school and get the I-20 and then apply for change of status. And so that basically would allow them, I presume, some type of a status, or perhaps even, I don't know exactly what the specifics were here, whether they would give them it would give them a
It would have, it'd
status.
be, yeah, it'd be a pathway to legal permanent residence.
Right,
Pretty
because
much.
it's a lot of times these kids, if they're waiting for a long time, they may what we call age out, and they may not be considered for the green card along with their parents. I mean, they get here as kids with their parents as a family unit, as family, and then all of a sudden the parents go on. They still have to wait many years to get their green cards, but all of a sudden the kids age out, right? So
Yeah.
so this would allow them to continue on their own without having to change status to, for example, to a foreign student F1, and then eventually legalize and obtain permanent residence. So very smart thing. It should be already in the books, but we're just playing this ping pong back and forth. We just kind of get our hopes up and it just goes away. And so
right.
There's got to be, and with all these bills that we're debating every so often, what's the underlying theme here? Comprehensive immigration reform. When you take all of it together and just start working on it systematically, so you don't have to. Even though I understand, right, that you're just kind of taking points at a time, since you're not looking at a bigger bill, but this is the result of it. I mean, we're talking about 36 years now that we really haven't seen anything big, anything that would have anything impactful, that would address all of these points.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of narrow bills, and this one actually was this push for documented dreamers was included in the House, the National Defense Authorization. So it's a military spending bill, right? Man, it's like 4,000 pages or something. It has everything that you can imagine. Well, the original plan was to include something for this situation, but when it was amended, the final version left that part out. So a lot of groups were, as you can imagine, disappointed. And the next step, I guess, would be to see if Senate would take that up. Maybe Senator Sinema and Tillis, and when they're doing the negotiation, maybe that could be something that is written in and maybe included in another bill. Like they still have that spending bill, the omnibus bill. So there's some things, but time is running out. The time clock is ticking, and they have to do something about it. But one other bill that is seeing some movement, fortunately, and this is for veterans. Again, a smaller group of individuals that could potentially benefit from changes in our immigration laws. And this week, the House passed the Veteran Service Recognition Act, which allows the opportunity for a deported veteran to correct the situation and apply for lawful permanent residence. And a lot of people are, how, you might ask yourself, right? How is it possible that an undocumented person is in the military? If it happens more than you think. We've had a few of these cases. This is just an example. A person enters the United States at an early age, and everyone's telling them, they're U.S. citizens. In some situations, the parents are able to get fake birth certificates, right? And they grow up thinking that they are assimilated Americans. They apply for driver's license, they work, they go to prom, etc. And even some serve in the military. So what happens is that that person's status usually is discovered after committing some crime, and they're placed in proceedings, and that's where it's discovered. And some, unfortunately, some of these veterans have been deported, and in some cases we're talking about offenses like they've committed DWIs or public intoxications that led to the discovery they don't have status. But you got to remember, a lot of these individuals have mental problems because they've been in wars, and they've been in the military service, and they've been active, and a lot of them have that post-trauma. And so naturally, some of them have resorted to alcohol and drugs, which cause them to get in trouble. Well, this is sort of a second life, a second chance for them to regain their residence, to apply to their residence. They might not have had residence in the past, but now they're giving a second chance to apply for legal permanent residence for the first time. Or if a person is currently facing deportation proceedings, then this law would allow, it calls for like a review. Some people are going to, in the military, are going to be involved in reviewing this case. I would imagine that's how it sounds like from the language, but they're going to identify those cases, and then they'll have the opportunity to apply for legal permanent residence, get their deportation proceedings terminated. One big thing, though, and this is in the language, is that if this person has committed a serious crime and it's defined as a crime of violence, then they do not qualify for this. So that's something really to look at. The other provision is that it provides a faster process for active service members right now in the military to apply for citizenship. So that is a good thing. So we'll see what happens. Do you have anything to add on that, Martin?
No. Is it like you said? We have numerous clients that got in trouble, and it's the result of just serving for this country and having to suffer through all types of circumstances, and they come out of it. Some of them are not as strong as the others, and then they find out that, oh, by the way, you're not a citizen, and you may have to leave and go live in a country that you don't even remember. And so it's certainly a positive development, and hopefully something that will be passed, and it will benefit many.
Yeah. So we were talking about all these groups, right? They're small groups. You have your farm workers, you have your dreamers. Dreamers are like, they're in the millions, but relatively speaking, they're small factions of the population, immigrant population. And you mentioned there is a need, of course, for something more comprehensive. There is another group. It's a larger group by far, I think, and this has to do with mixed status. And mixed status, and a lot of people are tracking this bill, HR 2920. It's the bill that would provide legal status. And this is a situation that this applies to where one person in the family, a spouse, normally is a U.S. citizen, and the other is a undocumented person. And basically, there's no solution. And that really is the typical situation we see for many immigrants that have family members. So we have many clients in a situation where the immigrant spouse cannot legalize under the current laws, usually because of the entry or deportation history. But this is something that is proposed that I think would by far be something that will benefit a large number of people. And I think it overlaps too. It overlaps to those other groups, because a lot of people are living here and they're formed families, and they have spouses, they have family, children, they were assimilated, they grow up here. And so this is something that could be beneficial.
Yeah.
The other, and I do not have it here. I thought I did. Oh yeah. Well, and this is another bill that we're monitoring for Afghan nationals who evacuated during the fall of Kabul and have fought the Taliban alongside with our military service personnel. And currently there's this temporary parole program, Operations Allies, I think that's what it's called, Allied Welcome. And that's not going to be enough, right? It's so they're proposing this, and like the documented dreamers, the Afghan nationals, this part was left out from the National Defense Spending Bill as well. And those two groups were initially included. They thought that maybe they would benefit from this bill being passed, but they were left out. So we're hopeful that they would pass a standalone bill. That's one option, or go hop on another larger bill. Moving on, do you have anything to add, Martin?
No. I mean, that's, again, we have to, as a country, we have to really appreciate the support of our allies, and then we should repay them. And so a lot of them put their lives of their families on the line, and somehow expected that we would be more welcoming, and that we would be more, I guess, open-minded about helping them to gain status, not just a parole, but status, so they can live here and not live in fear if they were to return and have, be killed, or have their families killed as well. So again, all of these things are very positive developments, but we got to get our representatives, our Congress people and senators act on this and do the right thing.
Yeah. So we get a lot of questions about bills, and there's a lot of information out there that the news heading, right, something's been passed, and our clients call us and they say, what can we do? When can we apply? And a lot of it has to do with how it's exaggerated in the news headings, where it makes it seem like something has passed. And a lot of our clients that, they're not from here, they don't know our legal system, they're not too aware, or they're not knowledgeable about the process of what makes a law. So we always try to educate as much as we can that these bills, these proposals, they're exactly that. They're just proposals. Nothing has been formed into a law yet. It is a process. It is a process where it's just like the schoolhouse fun cartoon that they have, right, where they explain the bill, and that's how it's passed. But it goes through. The bill is introduced by either the House or the Senate, and it's the committee in each House or Senate. They make up. They can make changes. They can add things. They can scratch things from the language, and with the House, a proposal forms into a bill. It's a bill that could be passed with a simple majority, and it's more complex, right, with the Senate, Martin, because it's a simple majority.
We're not talking about simple minority, majority. We're talking about having a filibuster proof, because you have a discussion on the bill, and if you want to end the debate and get to the voting, you get to the filibuster, which is 60, and that's when you discussed earlier. We're going to need about 8 or 9 or so many Republicans to help out with any particular immigration related bills. And so that's basically, unless you are going through the power of the purse, when you're going through the funding bills, like we have few attempts last year, or this year, when our viewers and followers remember, when it went to the Senate parliamentarian, who would then decide if that particular bill would somehow be affected, or the overall financial situation will be affected by the bill, and so the parliamentarian would then decide, this one person would decide if yay or nay, if they would be included or not included. And so that's when you're talking about just simple majority. But if you don't want to go through that route, which is only very few times you can do that a year, a couple of times, then you have to get to the magic number of 60. And so you like you mentioned, the bill comes out of committee, and both in both chambers, and that it just basically gets poured into one melting pot, and that's the conference where representatives from each chamber will go in and they'll do further negotiation of the bill, and then they'll implement further changes and propose further changes, and then that final version comes out and it goes back before both chambers for a vote, and if it passes, then it goes before the president, who will either sign it or veto it. So that's the beauty of our legislative process and rulemaking.
Yeah, and a lot of compromise, a lot of, and that's what's happening right now.
A lot of wheeling and dealing, right?
A lot of wheeling and dealing, and like you mentioned, the magic number, the key place right now we're looking at is the Senate. If you want to pass anything with the House, more Democrats. Simple math, more Democrats than Republicans. And so we think we have that in terms of immigration reform. And the Senate, there's 100 senators. And the magic, to be realistic about passing laws, you need to at least have 60 support the bill and convince those 9 or 10 senators, and then pass it to the president for signing. So that's how it becomes a law. So when you hear people say, sometimes we'll get calls like, how can I apply for this? Well, it hasn't become a law yet. There's still a process. So just be mindful of that. And that's what we're here. We're going to send you all messages, alerts, and educate. Again, this is the magic question here. We get asked a lot. They ask us, what is the likelihood of these changes happening this year, or these changes happening in general? I mean, what's the likelihood? And that is a hard thing to I'll give you my opinion. I mean, I think that there's for immigration reform, you're going to face long odds to pass it. It's just that's the way it is. Whether or not we're here during the session right before the end of the year, or in general, right? And here right now, as I said, the key to passing any law will be with the Senate. But that's going to change as we get to next year. As we go into next year, the House is going to be, the majority is going to be Republican. And as we know, the Republican members, we got to remember that their voting base wants to see border security, law enforcement, asylum restrictions, those kind of things above everything else. And it would be risky for them to sign on a pro-immigration law because of the perception, right, that they might be soft on border security and those things. So we'll see what happens. But I think if anything, we might see bipartisan support on smaller groups, not something big that would apply to many immigrants who are seeking legal status. I think you might see something for the veterans. It's a smaller group, and there's overwhelmingly support on both sides. Maybe perhaps for the Dreamers. We'll see what happens. What are your thoughts, Martin?
Yeah, I agree. There is only so many days left in the calendar year, and I really don't think much is going to happen. Perhaps the former military member bill. I'm not sure what the likelihood on the Dreamers proposal from Sinema and Tillis is going to be. Again, we just don't have enough time this year, and perhaps they'll kind of revive it again next year. But at that point, there's going to be a lot of wheeling and dealing in the areas of border security, and so if there's going to be enough Democrats that will stomach that request and are able to do that perhaps we'll see something. But it's really, it's
you hit it. I think you're onto something there, because I think that if these measures do not pass this year, we know it's going to be tough to pass them next year with the Republican House. But some have echoed your feelings and your sentiments about this, that there might still be some hope. And with a very narrow majority, the Republican leadership understands, as well as the Democrat leadership, that it must negotiate, compromise, go into the middle if it wants to accomplish any of its goals on their agenda. So Ironically, we could see more cooperation next year. I don't know, but that
Might
remains.
be, but I think if anything, I think they're going to focus on dreamers, right? Because
Yeah,
there's
groups.
just been way too many attempts to kick it away and just
Yeah.
cancel it, and language out of the circuit court saying, hey, we have the power to dismantle it. You know, that's just should make everybody feel uncomfortable knowing that we are talking about some 2 million people in fairly important industries, frontline workers, health industry, farm workers, and just we got to get it done. And I think that's going to be the opportunity, which I hope the Republicans will with that slim majority, will reach out to the Democrats and say, hey, let's work on this. Let's give them the peace of mind that they deserve, and let's get it done so we can have it codified, and these guys can breathe easily, and they can apply eventually, be residents, and then be full-blown citizens, and be able to go without any issues and looking over their shoulders. So for sure, that's something that I think that's going to be the number one thing that should be addressed. There was one more news, and that was the designation of Ethiopia based on an ongoing armed conflict. Was announced, I think today or yesterday. I think today.
Yeah, today.
And that requires that nationals of Ethiopia that they have a continuous residence in the U.S. since October 20th of 2022, and continuous physical presence from December 12th, 2022 onwards, and they'll be designated for 18 months. They'll be eligible to apply for work permit. So Ethiopia joins a list of other countries that they currently have the temporary protected status for its nationals. So that's something that is that just came through the wires.
Yeah.
And what else?
Well, we're at near the end, but before we conclude, this is an app that we've always have mentioned to you. If you like to get updates, if you like to receive news, maybe there are breaking news on one of these immigration reform bills that are going to affect some immigrants. If you want to receive that, we have this app where you can receive those notices, but it has a lot of other things that it does, right, Martin?
Yeah. So we say it over and over again, but Nick and I decided to release the app in addition to the platform. But this is for really for anybody that wants to notify their loved ones that they are in any type of trouble, any kind of emergency situation. But most likely, for our clients are immigrants, and that's notification of your loved ones, but also us as the attorney or an attorney that is representing you. Letting them know that you have a problem, that there is an emergency, and it will give the attorney your GPS location so we can see you on the map, and it actually records audio of the encounter and uploads it to the cloud for immediate review by the attorney. So it's just that there really is no better way of making sure that you are safe, or if you need any assistance. Nick mentioned news through push notifications. So if there's anything big that breaks that we think you should know, we push it to you, and you'll get it on your phones right away, and you get to see what it is. You can read on. It has know your rights. It just gives you legal advice in various situations. It's just fully loaded, and it's just a fantastic tool, and everybody should have it.
That sounds great. Before we say our goodbyes, I just want to do a shout out, Pedro. Saludos. Pedro is from Houston. He's a big fan of ours, and we appreciate your support, Pedro. Please share this information to people that you think might be helpful to, and don't forget to subscribe and like. Also, we do have a question, and this is a question from Valenzuela Hernandez. Thank you, Valenzuela. You have a question here about the DACA. And you are, let me see if I can put that up here. So basically, you want to know, you think they would include dreamers who were left hanging, whose applications are on hold? Oh, that's a good question. I don't think so. Valenzuela, I think that some of the efforts that we've seen include not only those who have DACA, but those who do not have DACA. In other words, Dreamer legislation, at least from what has been passed or has been proposed in the past, has also included protections for those who did not meet the original requirements of DACA. Maybe they came later. Maybe they came later in 2020, right? They wouldn't qualify. Or they just forgot to apply for DACA, and they can't apply for DACA initially right now because of an order against that part of the DACA program that allows for first-time nationals to apply for their DACA for the first time. But I think that any Dreamer legislation will include those who have DACA and those who do not but meet a certain criteria. Thank you, Valenzuela, for your question. And we have a question here. All right, so Paolo, Mr. Augusto, thanks for watching us. We're here to help. And you've worked with us in the past, as you mentioned. Thank you for doing that, and thank you for your continued support. All right, so we come to the end. As you heard today, these are bills and measures that we are monitoring carefully. Check with us regularly for updates as things are going to change quickly. And of course, if you have any questions about these proposals, about these bills later on, how they affect your case, please send us a question or a message, and we'll be glad to answer them. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Martin?
Yeah, that's it. Glad to be back again. We love what we do, and we love keeping you informed. So please stay tuned and get the Guardian app so we can be on your phones and be in your pockets, as some clients say. Hey, we have you in our pockets. So if anything breaking, we'll get to you, and if you have an issue, we'll know about it, and we can assist you. Just wishing everybody a safe weekend, and we'll see you here next week.
And remember to take a deep breath, everyone. Just take it all in and enjoy the season. We're here to help you all. Goodbye.
Take care. Bye-bye.